Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into a seriously uncomfortable paradox, one that almost every growing organization is going to face at some point. So picture this. You have a fully staffed company, revenue is actively coming in, the business is up and running every single day. And yet, somehow, when it's time to actually fund a new project, maybe upgrade a crucial system or hire that top-tier talent you desperately need, the exact same phrase echoes through the halls. We have no budget. I mean, it's a baffling feeling, right? How on earth can a company that is generating revenue constantly feel way too poor to invest in its own future? The instinctive knee-jerk reaction is to just assume there simply isn't enough cash to go around. But today, we are going to challenge that assumption entirely. So, really, why do companies with steady revenue still say they have no budget? Well, the truth is, we have no budget is very often just a symptom of poor visibility, not an actual lack of funds. When an organization feels broke despite bringing in money, it's usually because the leadership team simply cannot clearly see where their operational capacity is going. They're staring at the bank account balance, sure, but they are completely missing this massive, sprawling footprint of resources that are quietly, day by day, draining the company's energy in the background. It is an artificial scarcity. The company feels completely starved for resources, but the resources do exist. They are literally just hiding in plain sight. Because here is the absolute crucial point. The money is already inside the company. It's just trapped. And we aren't just talking about stacks of cash sitting in a vault somewhere. We are talking about capital, time, management attention, and raw organizational capacity. These incredibly valuable resources are locked inside old commitments, daily activities, and legacy tools that honestly no longer create enough value to justify what they're consuming. The company isn't out of money. It has simply allocated its wealth into a frozen state. And until we learn how to see exactly where this energy is trapped, the company is going to continue to operate with one foot slammed on the gas pedal and the emergency brake fully engaged. To help visualize this, I want you to think about what we can call the invisible corporate warehouse. Imagine there is a massive physical warehouse attached to your office building. Over the years, you've filled it with all sorts of stuff: old procedures, software subscriptions nobody actually logs into anymore, duplicate tools, outdated contracts, and unmeasured recurring services. Add in forgotten physical inventory, repetitive manual work, and, those projects nobody ever had the courage to just formally shut down. If you walked into a real physical warehouse and saw all this junk just gathering dust, you'd immediately realize how much wealth was being wasted sitting on those shelves. But because this corporate clutter is invisible, because it's buried in spreadsheets, daily habits, and routine calendar invites, we just tolerate it. We essentially keep paying the rent on this invisible warehouse every single day. So to clear out that warehouse, we need a fundamental, ground-up shift in mindset. We have to completely redefine the very word asset. An asset is not simply something you own. Look, just because a company bought a machine, signed a 5-year software license, or implemented a massive new process a decade ago, that does not automatically make it an asset today. That ownership, that's just a historical commitment. It's a sunk cost. A true productive asset is defined by one incredibly strict condition. It actively creates more measurable value than it consumes. If a resource is just sitting there eating up cash and time without producing a real return, it is no longer an asset. It is a burden that's just wearing an asset's name tag. To expose these hidden burdens, we like to use a diagnostic tool we call the -1 accountability test. It asks a beautifully disruptive question. If this resource fails to create the value it is supposed to create, who pays? Now hold on, we aren't putting a liquidation sticker on things or running some chaotic fire sale here. The -1 tag is a strict internal diagnostic discipline. It is a lens we apply to test if a protected legacy resource still deserves its funding today. By mentally applying this negative price tag to every recurrent cost, process, and tool, we finally attach accountability to missing value. It forces us to stop and ask if the thing we're paying for is actually pulling its weight, or if we are the ones quietly absorbing a daily penalty just to keep it around. Which brings us directly to the analytical framework we use to actually conduct this test, the Dead Asset Audit. This is how we systematically evaluate the true legitimacy of everything inside that invisible warehouse. And the absolute beauty of the Dead Asset Audit is that it completely strips away historical defenses. It literally does not care how much a software platform cost 5 years ago. It doesn't care whose pet project a certain procedure used to be. It looks only at the reality of right now. It is a highly structured way to separate the capital that actually compounds and grows from the capital that just sits entirely still. So let's walk through how this audit actually works in practice. It starts with two foundational, absolutely non-negotiable questions for every single resource. What value should this create, and how do we prove it? I know, it sounds simple, right? But you would be utterly amazed how many corporate initiatives cannot survive those two basic questions. We have to clearly state the expected value, avoiding the easy trap of defending something just because, well, it already exists. And then we demand proof. What is the undeniable evidence that this value is actually materializing? If you cannot define the expected value or you cannot prove it's actually happening, congratulations, you have just identified a piece of corporate clutter. Once we know what value we are supposedly getting, we then have to measure the true toll of keeping this thing around. This is the carrying cost. And let's be really clear about this. Carrying cost is rarely just a single line item on a vendor invoice. It is the ongoing, complex life support system required to keep a dead asset breathing today. It's the cash, yes, for sure, but it's also the time your team spends maintaining it. It's the management energy drained just by overseeing it. It's the physical or digital space it occupies. Carrying cost is that steady, exhausting daily bleed of resources flowing into something that is giving absolutely nothing back. But here is the thing. Carrying cost is only half the tragedy. That ongoing bleed builds into an even bigger, more dangerous problem, which is opportunity cost. If carrying cost is what you are spending today, opportunity cost is what you are actively giving up for tomorrow. This is the future option, the strategic experiment, the upgraded system, or that amazing new hire that you simply cannot fund because your capacity remains stubbornly locked up in legacy processes. Opportunity cost elevates the stakes. You aren't just wasting a little bit of money on a redundant software tool, you're directly sacrificing the very investments that could secure your company's future. And this leads us to the ultimate strategic escalation of this entire explainer. Dead assets don't just cost money today, they steal future options. I really, really want you to take this away with you. The real penalty of deadweight isn't seen on a single monthly invoice. It is seen in the automation project you were forced to postpone. It is seen in the vital training your team desperately needed but never received. It's seen in the competitor who moved way faster because they weren't dragging around an anchor of unmeasured comfortable habits. When you protect a dead asset, you are actively stealing from your own company's potential. Now, as we escalate this audit, it is absolutely vital to understand exactly where we draw a strict empathetic boundary. Let me be incredibly clear. People are not dead inventory. As we hunt for dead assets across the organization, human beings must never, ever be thrown into this category. Think about it. A piece of software cannot wake up tomorrow and decide to innovate. A broken procedure cannot learn from its mistakes. But a person absolutely can. Humans possess the unique, dynamic potential to learn, challenge assumptions, and build entirely new value. Treating your employees like disposable cost units or dead inventory is a catastrophic failure of leadership. In fact, the real culprit when people seem unproductive is almost always the environment they've been placed in. Weak systems trap human potential. When an organization provides no clear standards, missing data, and totally undocumented processes, they are actively setting their people up to fail. When you deny an employee specialist training, completely strip them of decision-making power, and offer zero feedback loops that tie their effort to an outcome, you are taking incredible human potential and forcibly converting it into a cost. The system is the bottleneck, not the person. And this distinction matters immensely when a company inevitably decides it needs to, cut costs. Because firing people while protecting useless processes is not efficiency, it's panic. A serious, well-run company does not jump to mass layoffs while willfully ignoring the invisible warehouse of dead assets we just talked about. A strong organization tests its systems first. It looks in the mirror and asks, did we even create a system where good people could actually become productive? You absolutely must stop carrying useless operations and broken reporting layers before you ever dare point the finger at your workforce. So, how do we finally break this cycle and deal with these non-human dead assets? We use the ultimate anti-inertia decision gate. Would we choose it again today with today's information? This question is so incredibly powerful, it completely severs the emotional tie to the past. It honestly does not matter who authorized it 3 years ago or how much it cost to install or that, my personal favorite, we have always done it this way. If you were building the company from scratch this very morning, knowing everything you know right now, would you buy this tool? Would you design this exact process? If the answer is no, it has failed the audit. And once a resource fails that test, there are really only 3 acceptable paths forward. First, you can improve it, injecting new standards and fixing the process so it actually delivers the value it promised. Second, you can repurpose it, taking that trapped capacity and pointing it at a completely different, high-value problem. Or third, you can remove it entirely. Just stop doing it, cancel it, shut it down. Notice what is blatantly missing from those options? There is no room to keep it because it's comfortable and we've always had it. That is sunk cost worship, and it literally has no place in a healthy, growing organization. When you ruthlessly apply this audit across the board, a really remarkable transformation starts to happen. You turn dead capital back into strategic energy. You don't have to wait around for some end-of-year crisis to miraculously find the budget for your next big move. You create your own budget by actively identifying what creates value and what destroys it. By removing the hidden weight that was already consuming your future, you suddenly free up the cash, the time, and the attention needed to upgrade, to automate, and to grow. You unlock the wealth that was trapped inside your own walls this whole time. Which brings us to our final overarching rule for all of this. Every resource must continuously earn its place. Not through historical importance, not through corporate hierarchy, and certainly not through the comfortable illusion of inertia. An asset only remains an asset through measurable, ongoing contribution. So take a look around your own organization. Open the doors to your own invisible corporate warehouse. What are you still paying to keep alive simply because nobody wants to admit it no longer works? Remember, the future belongs to the company that knows exactly which of its assets are actually alive.